Low key becoming my official theme song. Shout out Zoom for their, traditional stuff. Anyway, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Thank You for Sharing. If you watched the last episode or did anything like that, shout out to you because I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the feedback and I truly appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to genuinely listen to what I have to say. Like that really means a lot to me. You don't have to sit here and listen to me. So I really want to thank you for listening to me. So in today's episode, yes, I, a grown man, will be talking about his favorite movie, one of his favorite movies, Coraline. Man, I love this movie. Yes, it's technically a children's movie, but if you watched this movie as a child, I am so sorry for you because this movie, it's not made for kids. It's super creepy. Even me, as a grown man, will not watch this movie probably at night. However, it is the best rainy day movie. You can argue with anybody. I'm not finna sit here and argue with you. It's the best rainy day movie, and I turn it on every single time it rains. And I'm at home and I'm not doing anything. My first time watching this movie was with my friends. I think I was in school and we were home for the summer. And we decided we were just chilling one cloudy afternoon. I did not know that this was the perfect rainy day movie, but we were chilling like one cloudy afternoon and my friend throws it on. And little did I know she'll be changing my life by throwing that movie on. Me and like two of my other friends, we sat there and we watched the movie on a rainy day, which is the perfect backdrop to that movie if you know anything about it. And if you don't know anything about the movie, I'll give you a little synopsis. So the movie's about this girl named Coraline. She has like blue hair. She's like famously known for her blue hair. And her family, they moved to Oregon. In the original book, I think the author has it set in England, which makes sense because it is cloudy, whatever. For the movie, they set it in Oregon because, I mean, it's always cloudy in Oregon, so I'm sure they had some kind of connect. So she moves to Oregon into this old like apartment, but this apartment is essentially like an old house. I think the dad mentions it. The dad says how the house is like 150 years old. So you can imagine with a house like this, it has some kind of like history behind it, some creepy history, whatever. So she gets to the house and the first thing she do, she kind of navigates outside and in the garden and everything. And she kind of catches like poison ivy. She doesn't really know she has poison ivy yet, but it's crucial to the story. She goes and she bothers her parents, and her parents are kind of busy. They're making like a gardening catalog, and so they're so consumed with that they are not really paying their daughter attention. So needless to say, they're trying to get rid of her. So they're like, "Hey, Coraline, like explore the house." So as she's exploring this house, she comes along this little like trap door, but it has it's not a trap door, like a small door, and it has like a key. So she goes and she asks her mom like, "Hey, like, is there a key anywhere?" So her mom opens this drawer and there's a key in it and it's shaped like it's a key, but the round part of the key is shaped like a button. So her and her mom, they kind of open the door and boom, nothing's there. It's just like a brick wall. And she was like, like I could have sworn this door was leading somewhere, whatever. As she gets settled in the house, it's time for bed. And as she, goes to sleep, and you don't know at first if this is like a dream or if it's not a dream, a jumping mouse, yes, jumping mouse, comes and leads her back to that door that once had that once was bricked up. Not bricked up. The door that once had all the bricks behind it. But now this time it's like a colorful tunnel. So she goes down this tunnel this time. And as she goes down this tunnel, she's like transformed into a different world. And as she goes into this different world, it's exactly like her world, but except everything is upgraded. The house is more newer. And then she stumbles upon some peculiar characters. Her other mom. And at first, when she walks in, she's looking at how cool the house is and everything. But then she meets her other mother, and everything is normal until her other mother turns around, and boom, she has button for eyes. That would have been my first red flag, but hey, whatever. Like everyone says in life, it's crucial for the plot. So her other mother introduces her to this world that has everything that she could ever dream of. It has parents who are paying attention to her, parents who are cooking her these fine meals, not like her parents are in the real world. So she becomes just amazed by this new world that she's in, and this world that is specifically designed for her. It has her favorite snacks. I mean, they even have like a chandelier come down with her favorite milkshake, mango milkshake or whatever. And I'm not gonna lie, if I went to a other world and they had chocolate chip cookies, my other mother made chocolate chip cookies for me and they were good, I'd be a victim too. So anyway, she's in this world and the other mom and her other parents are trying to convince her to kind of stay here. But she's, it's kind of still soon. So she's kind of like, nah, I'm gonna go back to my regular world. But before she leaves, her mother spreads like this mud on her poison ivy patch. So when she gets back to the other world, she wakes up and she can't, differentiate like, wow, was that a dream or was this like real life? When she looks at her hand, she now knows that this has some realness to it because when she looks at her hand, her poison ivy is gone. So she goes back to her regular world and she kind of, explains to her mom about everything that happened in the other world. And her mom, you know how parents are with kids, she kind of writes her off, whatever. So needless to say, Coraline keeps going back to this other world. And in this world, they have upgraded characters of the ones that are in the real world. So they have this character whose name is like Mr. Babinski. He's like this Russian mouse circus leader. And in the real world, he's kind of a bum, but in this dream world, his jumping mice are amazing. And, he goes from looking like this homeless guy in the real world to this poor, well put together version of himself. So there's other characters in the regular world, like a character named Miss Spink and Miss Forcible. And they're kind of like old retired actors or entertainers. They have like these weird accent. I don't even know where that accent is from. These people, everybody in this story is kind of off, like Mr. Babinski, because I like to say his name like that, but Mr. Babinski, he is kind of to himself and he only talks to mice, which you can imagine is not really good for your mental capacity. And you have these two actresses who have each other, but they have like these Scottish hounds who they taxidermy once they die and then they bicker. And so all these weird characters, but in this other world, they are kind of like prime versions of themselves. And so naturally, Coraline gravitates towards this other world. Then eventually things kind of start to fall apart, or things kind of get this element of like, oh man, this is too good to be true. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when she goes to this new world and Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, they put on this elaborate play with like this crazy set design. I think I gravitate towards it so much because you're kind of transformed. It's kind of meta because you're watching a movie, but in the movie you're watching the play. And in a weird way, you watching the play, it's kind of like you're there and you're experiencing the play with Coraline. And so they have like this elaborate, just like non-realistic show. They're like doing all of this kind of like circus stuff. And I don't know, for me, I just gravitate towards it because, hey, it's amazing. And this movie just has so many like colors and anything like, anyway. So like I said, Coraline, she becomes infatuated with this new world that she is kind of not paying her old world any attention. She is just so fixated in this world that is catering to her. And much like anybody or why not? Like, who wouldn't become more fascinated with the world that's dedicated to them? Then her other mother gives her an ultimatum. She says, hey, if you want to stay here, you got to put your buttons on. We got to sew buttons on you. So Coraline freaks out. She's like, no way, you're not going to sew buttons on me. So she kind of runs away and goes back to her old world. But it's not that easy. When she gets back to her old world, her parents are gone. So now she has to go back to this other world, which was once perfect, but now it's kind of saturated and now it's more sinister than she remembered because the other mother is trying to convince her to stay here. Eventually, Coraline does what it takes to get her parents back and save other children in the midst of it. So eventually, Coraline, she plays the game that the other mother wants her to play. She wins, and her world kind of comes back together. But for a second there, she thought there was no coming back from this new world that she found that was once perfect. And now she's realizing that it's not as perfect. And I just kind of want to touch on that a little bit. I do want to touch on the fact that I like this movie because it's reflective of life. I'm not sure of what you're going through or anything like that, but me at my point of my age, I'm starting to realize that everything that glitter isn't gold. Everything that the world tells you that you need doesn't seem to like fill a void or doesn't seem to make you genuinely happy. The realizations that I've made watching this movie, and yes, it's a children's movie, but yeah, I look into it much more deeper because it does have meaning to me. I think that's why I always keep coming back to the movie. And the meaning that I have behind this movie is to learn to appreciate the things that you have. We live in a world where it's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life, and we don't sit here and we don't appreciate the small moments. Much like Coraline, she got caught up in the hustle and bustle of this new world. She didn't really appreciate her parents until they were gone. And so there's times in life where we don't appreciate things until they're gone. When I was growing up, I practically lived in the same house. 17 years I've lived in this house. This is the only place that I've called home. And when I went off to college, it was my first time being outside of my house and my home. And while I was in college, my mom decided to do what parents do. You know, they decided to move on to the next chapter of their life. And, you know, me being the child that I am, I don't want to hold my parents back from moving on to the next part of their life. And they decided to get a new home. And for a moment there, it didn't really resonate with me. It didn't really stick with me that, wow, when I would go back home, it would never be to the house that I grew up in. It would never be to that house. And for me, it kind of made me move through life with a little bit more of appreciation of where I'm at. Because when I was growing up in that house, in a way, like I said, I only associated that house with home. So in a way, it kind of made me realize that things in life are always changing, and to really appreciate, you know, where you are in the present. There's a phrase called "be at where your feet at," and I think that's a valuable phrase that I'm learning to, you know, even apply to my life. I feel like I'm in a part of my life right now where I'm not exactly where I want to be, but that's okay, because life is a journey, and I'm starting to understand that this is a journey. And in order to appreciate where I'm going to be, I have to learn how to appreciate now and appreciate the small moments now, which is really hard, man. We live in a time where social media is a thing, and I'm not hating on social media whatsoever, because it can be this beautiful thing, but it can also be this hard thing where people always are comparing themselves to other. Or when you have those type of thoughts, you're kind of not appreciating where you are now, or you're not really kind of understanding that everybody is going on a journey at their own time, and that you have to appreciate that you're on your own journey. And one thing I just want to say that I'm learning, everything that I'm saying, I'm, you know, saying to myself, when you're in this point in life, you could kind of feel like you're not in the moment and that you're not appreciate things, because if you're anything like me, I'm a big dreamer. Like, I'm always in a constant state of, man, like, this is what I want for my life. This is the vision that I have. But I feel guilty of being not in the moment when I know I should be. And that can cause me to not appreciate things, or that can even, you know, cause me to not appreciate the people or appreciate the experiences that I'm having now. Like, even the small times of hanging out with your friends now, or back, let's say if you could think of a time in your life where you were hanging out with friends and you look back on it now and you're like, wow, those are the good times in life. But now, you know, you find yourself maybe not having those same moments. And I personally don't think it's the fact that you're not having those moments. I think that it's the fact that you don't know how to appreciate them. Society, you know, people don't teach us how to appreciate the things that we have in life. Like, no one teaches us that. You know, that is something that has to be self-taught. You know, everybody talks about having a dream, but no one talks about the danger of having a dream. Yes, the danger of having a dream. What do you mean by that? I was reading, like, and I know I'm going completely off on a tangent, but hey, whatever. Welcome to my podcast. I was reading a Will Smith book, and one of the things that he talked about is that he protected himself by being a dreamer. And that worked for him to an extent until he reached adulthood and he achieved everything that he wanted to achieve, or, you know, his dreams were now becoming reality. And what that can cause you to do, it can cause you to dissociate. And I'm all about, hey, delusional, because, hey, in a sense, I'm positively a delusional person. I have these goals and I have these dreams that no one in this world can tell me, bro, you can't achieve that. Because I genuinely feel like I can achieve anything I put my mind to. But, people don't talk about how dangerous it is to be a dreamer. There's many times in my life where I found myself disassociating with the present because the present wasn't exactly what I dreamed of. There were times where I would go through maybe a situation that I could really learn from. It was a hard situation that I could learn from. But instead of me being present in that moment and being a student to whatever, God and whatever life was teaching me, I'm sitting here thinking about, oh man, life's gonna be sweet when I'm in my Porsche. Life's gonna be sweet when I'm in my mansion. And although I do believe in like you should manifest things, you should make goals, but I think those things are much more sweeter when you learn to appreciate now. In this movie, Coraline didn't appreciate her parents. She didn't appreciate her life. And yeah, life can be hard. In this movie, her parents were not paying attention to her. So it's easy to kind of disassociate when things aren't going your way. But just like in this movie, life always have a way of coming back to you and kind of teaching you how to be appreciative. One of the biggest things that stick with me is Matthew McConaughey's Academy Award speech. I would listen to it. I learned this trick from like Jay Shetty, but I would listen to this speech like every morning. And in this speech, he talks about gratitude. He says gratitude is something that not only physically, but scientifically reciprocates. So I always try to be a person who is grateful. I really struggle with staying in the moment. And I think that social media and society doesn't teach you that. There's times where we create our own world. And yes, this world is perfect. But what about the times that you're experiencing now? You can look forward to a dream. I'm definitely not saying, hey, don't look forward to a dream. But essentially what I'm saying is, and everything that I'm saying to myself, but essentially what I'm saying is, don't be too caught up into the future where you're not appreciating now. Because you never know, like, what's to say if you were to achieve these goals and they don't make you as happy as you thought they would? Coraline, she went to this world where she had everything handed to her. Everything was just catered to her, but yet there was something off. That's real dangerous, and that relates to real life. Because we happen to put things on pedestals, and we put people, and I'm guilty of it. I don't want to sit here and not like I'm preaching to nobody. I'm definitely guilty of it myself. But we put things on pedestal just to figure out like, wow, this person isn't who I thought they were, or wow, me obtaining this item isn't what I thought it was. Like, I'm in my point of my life where I'm learning to reevaluate my goals. I know this is a crazy spinoff from a children's movie, but I promise you, like, it all makes sense. It all connects. But I'm in a point in my life where I'm learning to reevaluate my goals because, dude, I am guilty. I am guilty of sitting here and be like, bro, I want the finest clothes. I want the nicest cars, I want to be held in good regards because I have obtained these things. But if you really sit here and you listen to the people that have these things, they're not happy. When Coraline went to this other world and things wasn't all, when everything was perfect, somehow she found herself not happy. And isn't that crazy? That we can find ourselves in life wanting all these things and, getting them, and we're still not happy, versus where a lot of people who've reached heights of success tell you the best way that you can get there is slow. Like, it's something powerful about that. Like, even in terms of me with this podcast stuff and me growing my YouTube channel, people are talking about the best way you want to do that is slow, because you learn things along the way. Who wants all of that stuff handed to them? Where's the beauty in that? Where's the story with that? How often can those things provide happiness? How long can they hold you before you're like, man, I want something new? And then when you look back on your life, because time is immensely valuable, when you look back on your life, all these moments that you could have had with friends and family and just outside and enjoying nature, you passed up on because you sitting here dreaming about. The sad part is life is not promised to anybody. That is one thing that I'm learning in life right now. Life isn't promised to anybody. So for me to sit here and not be in the moment, this sounds kind of dark, but I never know what could be my last breath. So I'm sitting here and I'm so fixated on, oh, bro, like in the future, in the future, or I'm dreaming, things in my present can be going past moments that I have with people or moments, moments that I can really make memorable. All that goes past me if I'm not sitting here in the present. And I know this is like so deep for a children's movie, but I think I like this movie so much because it reminds me of a time in my life where I was with two friends and we were just enjoying the movie. We were enjoying each other, time. And it's really a timestamp. And that's why a lot of things that I talk about or am going to talk about on this podcast, or they're going to be timestamps for people, times in their life where they can look back and be like, oh, this is cool. Just because that moment is cool doesn't mean I want to stay in that moment forever. If anything, I want to create new moments, possibly with new people. But how can I do that if I'm always focused on the future or the past? Although this is a kid's movie, it's still profound in the message. I'll be real with you. I'm not saying every time I sit here and watch this movie, I'm not like, wow, man, I just need to. But in a way, in a sense, it reminds me to stay present. Being present is learning how to be grateful and appreciating the things that you have in life. That is super important. And on a very unserious note, I really like the colors in this movie. Like, I really enjoy the color palette of this movie. It's when you're watching it, it's just so mesmerizing. Whether it's the grays of a cloudy day or the color palette of even being in the kitchen in this new world. Like in a way, the director really wants you to realize that this world is an alluring world, that, anybody can fall for this trap. But how is one way that you can't fall for the trap? And that's to be present. Coraline didn't allow herself to get caught up in the whirlwind of the world. She did at first, but then when she started being present, she was like, hey, like, this doesn't make sense. Nothing this perfect. And then in a weird way, she kind of wished for things to not be as perfect. So when she was able to free her parents from the snow globe, I didn't mention that part, so that probably sounds like a fever dream, but when she frees her parents from the snow globe, she's kind of happy to do these mundane things again. She's not into having everything like she once had it. She's down to sit here and appreciate her parents for who they really are and not what they could be. And sometimes we need to appreciate life for what it is and not what it could be. I'll sound like a broken record. I'm not saying don't dream, don't, live in the future a little bit, don't plan ahead. But, take time to be present. I think one thing that I do in terms of try to be present is I'll go for a walk in the park and I just try to like clear my head. I try not to think of like anything else while I'm on this walk in the park. Every time I wake up in the morning, I pray. I'm so fortunate to just start listing off these things that I'm grateful for. Like I try to make that a habit, especially like during my work week or whatever. I try to make a habit of like, like I'm happy to, I'm happy to see another day. I'm happy to have a car to drive to work. Is it my dream job? By any means, no. But I'm fortunate, a lot of people don't have things. A lot of people don't have what we have. Although I do want a Porsche, specifically, GT4. and a nice house and all those things. What life has taught me is to give more reasoning behind you wanting specific things. Just don't say I read a lot, and I read this like Jay Shetty book, Think Like a Monk. And he talks about setting goals for yourself. I bet you didn't think this conversation was going to be this serious when you clicked on this video or you started listening to this podcast. But Jay Shetty talks about being present. It's okay to have things. It's okay to want things, but what's the reason? You know, you don't want to be so, you don't want these things to own you. You know, you want to own these things. So basically, if you learn anything today from this children's movie, learn to be in the moment, learn to appreciate things that you have, because like I said before, and I'll say it again, life is short. I have this phrase in life, it's real dark, or some people think it's dark, but it's remember you will die. And I don't think it's so dark that it's focusing on death, but more or less on just remember that you will die one day. So learn to appreciate the smaller things. Learn to appreciate this journey, because if I'm being honest, I'm rooting for everybody watching this video. I'm rooting for all of y'all. I wish success for everybody, because it's room at the table for all of us. Whether you're creative or whether you just have these dreams, learn to appreciate your journey. You know, don't learn to appreciate things once you're there. Because and I'm not talking for experience necessarily, but I just have a feeling that once you get to this place, people who have these things talk about, once you get to this place and you've achieved the things that you want to achieve and you've got the things that you wanted to get, they're still not happy. You know, they're still not present. And I just urge people, and when I mean people, I'm definitely like talking about myself. I urge people to take time and just be where you at, whether that's meditation, whether you just kicking it with some friends, whether you listening to music or you watching a movie, be there, be in that moment, really kind of taking the surroundings of where you're at and learn to be appreciative. And that is what a children's movie like Coraline has taught me. If you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate you. I will continue to learn how to do this. Don't be surprised that these episodes are going to be me on a soapbox or me being completely off subject. If you love the movie Coraline, you know, share with me some of your favorite moments. Share with me some of your favorite scenes in this movie and some of the lessons that you learned from it, because I know this movie has a diehard following. People literally have her tattooed. She's in the room everywhere, and it's not because it's a good movie to just look at. It's because it has meaning behind it. So what is your meaning behind Coraline? Remember, stay in the moment and appreciate the things that you have. Thank you for watching another episode. Chris out.